Okay, so welcome back to the Hockey Hacks podcast presented by Hackle Hockey Training. I am Mason Hackle, and I've been studying the best athletes in the world in addition to the best hockey players in the world, and I'm here to share that knowledge with you. So, on this episode of the podcast, we've got seemingly controversial one with diet, and I say that because it doesn't really fit in immediately into where your hockey performance ties into. But I will tell you what I'm currently eating. I should note beforehand, too, that I'm not a dietary expert. I'm not a nutritionalist either. So this is basically speaking from my personal experience. But I've also been looking at other experts in this field, too, which are referenced in the article that I wrote that accompanies this podcast. But basically, I have been eating what's called an animal-based diet for the past year to this point. It is September 24th as I'm recording this, 2023. It was exactly a year ago because that's when I moved to the location that I'm at now. So I've been basically on this diet for a full year, basically slowly eliminating so many foods that I used to eat. Oh, by the way, I'm eating my dinner at the same time that I shoot this just because, or at least have it out. I don't know if I'll eat it, but at least have it out here just to show, part of what I eat. So I have bananas and honey, frozen bananas and honey to my right. And then I have beef and rice and raw milk with honey to my left. And take a proper bite of that beef, actually. There we go. Hope this doesn't pick up too much audio in it. But I started testing it out in May of 2022. And the article lists out a little bit later why I say that I'm testing it out instead of just fully going into and committing to the diet. But basically this diet or way of nutrition or how I eat has completely shifted my view on how I, view nutrition and food, and in addition to contributing to the changing my physique and the change in my performance because I have more energy than I used to as well. I can think a lot clearer, which I'll dive deeper into it. The diet is this. Animal-based is this. Meat, fruit, honey, raw dairy. And that is the general base of my current diet. I do have a few changes here and there, which, again, I'll detail out later. But wait, is it not true that red meat causes colon cancer and heart disease? Is it not true that fruit, honey, and excess sugars cause diabetes? Is it not true that raw dairy can kill you? Well, that's according to the United States Center for Disease Control and Prevention. It is true that it is in there, but if this thing was really that toxic, it should be killing me by now. And I've been drinking it for about 8 months or so. And it should have killed the people who were drinking it over 50 years ago on a regular basis. So if I listen to the US government's metrics for nutrition and health, I should be setting myself up for a life of absolute misery with my current diet. But that doesn't appear to be happening to me. So some background is needed. Here we go. The reason I'm just giving a story instead of just stating facts about the diet is because I'm a big proponent of testing things out. You can call it pragmatism. You can call it like desire to have an experimental lifestyle. You can call it like whatever you want. You can call it an attraction to the opposite of what you learned as when you were growing up too, which I believe all those factors are valid. But I don't know like if there's one reason that I'm doing this. It's also that I feel amazing with it. The first mention I heard that, contrary to popular belief, red meat is actually healthy for you was an interview with Jordan Peterson on the Joe Rogan podcast. Apparently, an all meat diet cured his autoimmune diseases in himself and his family. And actually, it was his daughter, Michaela, who discovered that an all meat diet cured her autoimmune problems. And then she shared her results with her father and the rest of her family. She refers this to the Lion diet because it's a little bit more specific as to what the type of meat that you need to eat to not get a major autoimmune reaction. They are that sensitive, or at least she is that sensitive, her body, I should say. So the podcast number was JRE 1139. Jordan detailed that he lost over 50 pounds, stopped snoring, started waking up properly in the morning. He was dealing with major depression, which is an autoimmune issue. And probably most weird of all, he had a complete reverse in symptoms for gum disease, which is supposed to be incurable. Gingivitis is supposed to be incurable, and apparently his gums are completely healthy when they weren't not too long ago. Now, like myself, neither of those two are renounced dietary experts. But as Jordan states, after you talk to 1,000 or more people with the same anecdote, you no longer have an anecdote. You have a hypothesis. This story initially got me interested in changing what I ate to only meat and greens, primarily chicken and broccoli. But what I did differently at the time, this was around November 2021, I should say. The biggest difference I had was I was still eating a crap load of condiments, like Frank's hot sauce, Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce, and ranch dressing, all of which are terrible for you and not part of the diet that he was on. But this matters for me because that is what started the thought process, or the contemplation for a diet like this. That was so interesting to me at the time. Here's a quote from Jordan Peterson. Here's a question. Why is everyone fat and stupid? That's a question, man. There's something wrong with the way we're eating. Another turning point that got me interested in the meat and fruit/veggies approach was Ben Patrick's diet, which he detailed out in Mark Bell's Power Project number 672, and when he was on Joe Rogan's podcast as well, 1766. He says, I have a coffee in the morning because I want to get working and not have to think about eating. And then once we finish our workout, I go to a local place and get a steak and eggs or a rotisserie chicken. Then I have another serving of that protein for dinner. But I also study to see which fruit is in season, and I'll fill a whole bowl of that for dessert. So I basically eat meat and fruit. In March of 2022, I met about 10 fellow ATG coaches or people associated with that, with ATG, including Ian Irby, Patrick Bell, Andres Rodriguez Story, Max Hernandez, Wade Hutchin, Jason Lane, Corey Dean, who was the host at that gym, and many others. I'm sorry to say I forget. It was an amazing event. I remember that we had dinner together that after that expo that was exclusively steak, eggs, and I forget if there was fruit there or not, but it was definitely the steak and eggs that was there. And then about a month later, the first time I ever met Ben Patrick in person, 10 times as many ATG coaches, for a 2-day expo in April 2022. Every lunch that we had those 2 days, we were served with steak, avocado, and fruit. So basically eating this way with many other people who were doing the same thing made me want to continue. So when I got back home, I began to look at where I could start. I started to buy anything that was grass-fed beef and brought a little bit more fruit and honey than I had before, because I didn't have fruit and honey before. And over the next couple months, my stove started to get covered in beef fat from, it all splashing from not cleaning up afterwards. I'm not ashamed to say that. Oh, something I should add too. I was on a meal prep service. They were shipped to me. For I was on that for about a year, and that at the time that saved me a lot of time with cooking. And it's also interesting shift where I went from not cooking every day to cooking every day. And I think that made me even more aware of what I was eating. At the time I heard the Jordan Peterson interview and what was going on with what he was eating, that was when I canceled the meal delivery service. Not that they're a bad company, it's just I was changing diet just from these different stories that I heard that frankly were really interesting about the way that you eat and how it changes your lifestyle. And your lifestyle affects your performance. So that is how eating relates directly to your on ice performance. Not that this hasn't been talked before with different nutrition and the times that you eat before like your biggest games, let's say. But to go on something that's radically different, where it's basically only like 2 or 3 ingredients, that is something I never heard of before, and got really interested to see how it would affect my body. Anyway, back to the article. But I had a problem. The gyms I was going to were more than 30 minutes away from my apartment at the time. So I was working out for about 2 hours, at least 5 days of the week, sometimes 7. And I was starving when I walked out. Like I had to eat something. So I ended up still eating at places like Chipotle, Qdoba, Popeyes. There's a home prepped meals from a convenience store called Quick Trip. And then I would drive home and eat it in the car. And then at home, I would drink about half a gallon of Nesquik chocolate milk, extra chocolatey, and I'll say why. And I'm not ashamed to say that I would also pour scoops of that powder into my mouth, just like I was doing the cinnamon challenge every single day. That was fun, but maybe a little more chubby. Probably made me a little more chubby than I would like to. It wasn't terrible. Maybe it was up to like 13 or 15% body fat instead of 12 where I'm at now. But anyway, so I'm probably missing some other details, which is important because with diet, you're not going to get every single detail, especially like with the country that we live in, where it's like some foods here are just not the same as they are in other countries. So you're going to get increased chemicals like glyphosate and other pesticides too. And in addition to that, I don't have a camera on me 24 hours in a day to tell you exactly what I ate. And not to mention, I don't have any food logs or anything like that. There was a mention of the United States being notorious for unethical chemical management. I'm not going to get every single detail, and that is important because, again, in some ways, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but there is still a transformation I need to tell you about. However, here is what started my change over the months from May of 2022 to October of 2022. Over this period, the only constant was my food at home, which was beef, fruit of my choice, raw honey, and Nesquik chocolate milk. My first food swap was changing my Chipotle and Qdoba burritos paired with queso and chips into bowls with queso and chips. And I continued that for a couple weeks and just ate more of the things at home if I ever felt hungry. The next thing I did was swapped the condiments that I had, threw all those out, and I swapped it with honey. That was interesting to see because I never put honey on like my steak or my meat before, but it actually made it taste a little better. I first saw that, I believe, from Max at one of the expos, and I was like, I want to try that too. Eventually, I got the urge about 2 months later, which is sometimes how things work for me when I desire a change in behavior or what I do. After that, I stopped going to Popeyes completely. Before all of this, I was going to that place once every month or so, and sometimes it would be two. But really, it was just for the mouth pleasure and not for the health of my body. Then I would say about a month later, I eliminated beans from my bowls. Then I did something I heard from one of the Texas friends. I think it was Andres Arcori this time, and that was eating Wendy's patties. I swapped eating Wendy's patties for every time that I craved the chips and the queso. And within a week, those chip and queso cravings completely went away. Then I got rid of rice from my bowls and swapped for extra meat. So I was getting the double count at, say, both the Chipotle and Qdoba. And then I would get 3 patties from Wendy's on my way home. So they're about a quarter pound, I think. I don't know if that's true, but probably less. But that you get the double bowl from Chipotle or Qdoba, which was chicken and steak for me, and then I got the 3 patties. That would generally fill me up just fine. So during this time, I was eating the steak and chicken from Chipotle or Qdoba with cheese and sour cream, and I would add Wendy's patties with their cheese on the way home from the gym, which I remind you was over 30 minutes away from my home, and I was starving for some type of food. So this was how I started animal based. Simple swaps over a period of time. But at the time, I knew this was not sustainable because I'm spending over $25 on every single lunch that I eat. And I just, at the time, I couldn't get myself to just finish the drive home and like starve it out and wait to cook it at home. I had to get something right away. But this all changed in September 2022 when I moved to where I currently live now. And I moved a couple apartments as well. So the current place that you see me in is literally 5 minutes away from my gym. So that was a perfect spot at a perfect time to cook everything from home. And therefore, the perfect time to start going as full animal based as I could. So I started all those swaps, kept doing all those swaps. In October of 2022, I eliminated my last major craving, Nesquik chocolate milk. That was a literally 20 plus year craving that I had. And it dates back to when I was an infant, just, chugging gallons as an infant of Nesquik. That was absolutely delicious. So the food that I swapped with that at the time was low temp pasteurized milk with honey, and that was it. I was officially as animal based as I could. So my initial start on the animal based diet was like very interesting. I had a lot of heartburn, and that was, I'm sure, very likely to the massive spike in fat intake. I had to take like Tums as an antacid every other day for a month while my body adjusted. But then occasionally I had to use the restroom more often than not. Although compared to other people who I've heard had, let's just say, incredible restroom experiences, Joe Rogan comes to mind on that. I was actually doing a lot better with my restroom management, let's say. But my energy slowly increased, and it was elevated compared to where I was over a year ago. I was a lot more clear-headed, I would say. Um, I didn't need to take the pre-workouts that I used to have anymore. I got rid of those just because I didn't want the chemicals in that. So it was just a coffee, and um, yeah, it was just a coffee actually at my a coffee and a water at the point where I eliminated the most out of what I was eating. My workouts in the morning when I intermittently fasted were still up to par. I was still much more clear headed. There we go. And I could do tons of work during the day. And aside from the pressure that I put on myself, nothing seemed doomy and gloomy. But aside from the extra energy, the first physical change that I saw with my body was a near elimination of acne. I have had problems with that since I was like 13, because you go through the teenager phase where it's like, oh, your hormones are adjusting, and and that's just, you're going to get a bunch of these little dots on your face and your back and maybe on your chest too. And you should be ready for that to be done by 18 or so. Turns out that didn't happen for me. I wasn't done at 18 with my acne. In fact, it continued until I was literally 22 when I started doing this diet. So I don't believe for a second that that's a hormone thing. I'm to say something controversial for the health sphere, because I know this is still technically a hockey podcast. I'm not sure that acne is like something that is a should be part of your life. I don't think teenagers should be getting acne just because their in quote hormones are adjusting. I don't believe that for a second. I don't know the sciences behind it, but like if they went on a diet like this, I don't think they'd be getting acne. I would like to see them try it, and that would be interesting beyond belief if that actually changed some things. Obviously, not my scope to comment on what exactly the studies are going on. That's for the other people that I reference later in the article. You can check out their sources always. The other thing that was cleared up for me over time was my eczema. So I've had eczema since I was a kid. It wasn't major. I didn't have any major problems with it. There'd be different spots on my elbow and behind my knees, right above my calf. If I get an allergic reaction to something, then it will flare up, which goes to tell you that it's autoimmune. It's the body attacking itself. It's not something that's just genetic. It's something that can be like fixed. Because in March of 2023, I started adding raw milk to my diet instead of just the low temp pasteurized milk, and I haven't looked back. So if you want to know what cured my lifelong eczema problem, look no further to my success here. Along with my meat, fruit, and honey, raw milk and raw cheese and other raw dairies have been overall incredible to me into changing something like that. Like when I would put on my hockey gear like a lot, that's where it got really bad, because you get the sweat into all those pits in both, where the elbow joint is and where the knee joint is. Right? When it got bad and you just have to keep itching it, that would just continue to make it worse. I haven't. The missing comparable here is that I haven't been on the ice as much as when I was playing junior hockey, but my skin is still much, much, much clearer than when that was the case. And I had problems with that eczema really right up until I changed my diet, which, yeah, now that I think about it, there were points where I wasn't on the ice as much, where I wasn't in full gear as much. I was only in full gear once a week. I still had those major eczema problems. But when I changed my diet and when I inserted the raw milk, those have gone away. Those have gone away. Like, you can just look at my skin here. I used to have something right here. It would be all red. Used to have some things behind the knees. I don't know if I'll be able to show it here, but it's all smooth. It's not red like it used to be. Also, I'm getting tan a lot easier too. Like, at this time last year, I was completely white, and dare I say pale, even though I don't think that was a pale problem. It was just a lack of sun. I'm able to get more sun now. I don't use sunscreen, by the way. But yeah, this eczema thing has been, with me since I was born, basically. And I don't know if it's completely gone, because like I said a little bit earlier, I will get a reaction if I eat the wrong food or the wrong medicine, especially the wrong medicine, I should say. Or maybe the environment too. Let's say if there's like mold in the house, I'm sure something like that would pop up for me. I'm sure, like, if there was a bacteria or a staph infection, which I had, by the way, that would flare things up. But aside from that, like, it's all clear, and that's a huge shock to me, honestly, because I thought I had to deal with that. That just go to the dermatologist all the time. It's like, if I imagine your eczema is so bad, and this happened to guys like Marian Hossa, actually, where he had a major skin problem. He had to retire from something like that, just because the maintenance on that was like too much to take care of. He had to retire from a skin issue. I'm pretty sure. But so if you get something like that, if he was on a diet like this, because obviously the medications weren't working, otherwise he wouldn't retire, or have retired at the time, I should say. I really wonder if that would have helped someone like him. Like, here's where it deals. That's exactly where the diet and the skin issues of eczema in particular, that's how it relates to your game. So if you have to retire out of the stupid skin issue, it's like, well, that how are you going to play? So that's an area where maybe it doesn't relate to your performance on the ice, maybe. But I imagine if your skin isn't feeling like you have spiders crawling over you or you have to itch it constantly, then, like, you're going to actually be able to perform. So that's just some food for thought. Now, I should note some caveats. I have tested different fruits, and I've landed on mangoes, pineapples, and frozen chopped bananas as my go-to fruit. I find I don't do well with berries like blueberries and strawberries, even though they're delicious. I just get too much heartburn with them, I find. Even if I wash them or get some organic ones from a local farm or a local farmer's market. I ate avocados for a long time, but eliminated them in February 2023. At the same time, I had a reaction to a medication I took from a staph infection on my thighs, which that affected everything else I ate too. But aside from that medicine disaster, I actually feel like avocados make me a little bloated, more so than I want to be. But maybe the problem that I had with that, in addition to some other foods that I had potential problems with, is because I ate like too much of them. Maybe more of them and less of the less of the meat at the time, and now I'm eating more meat and less of the fruit, even though they're all still part of my general base of the diet. Meat is really the only thing I feel like I can eat a lot of and be okay with. Like I mentioned earlier, I have reintroduced rice a number of times, and I'm currently eating it now. And I drink about a half a cup to 1 cup of coffee every morning. It's like your standard mug that you find in every Target or store. So it's more, I think it's about half a liter. Just for reference, technically coffee and rice are not part of this animal-based diet because rice is a grain, coffee is a seed, the burnt seed actually. They want to just have it as the most edible part of the plant and also have meat as your base and the elimination of as many seed oils as possible. That's the idea behind the diet. Paul Saladino can explain it way better than me, but that's what I'm doing. Is I'm keeping the coffee, I'm keeping the rice. I feel okay with them. I know the side effects of especially the coffee and even some of the benefits too. But I have a good caffeine management because that's the only time I, drink it, and it's a very limited quantity. It's only really no more than a cup, no more than half a liter. That's it. So basically, my current diet consists of about 85-20 beef, and I eat about 2 to 3 pounds of that per day. Raw milk, raw kefir, occasionally some raw Parmesan cheese, mangoes, frozen bananas, raw honey, coffee, bioavailable supplements like creatine, Serpo amino hydrate. Use my code for a 10% discount at checkout. Heart and Soil's whole package, in addition to some other desiccated organs that they have, lime and lemon, and as low microplastic sea salt as I can get. And what is not mentioned in there is that I'm eating rice as well. On emergency basis, I will eat patties or steaks from restaurants if I'm eating out, and I will ask about the oil that they're cooked in to see if there's any seed oils or if they're just thrown onto the grill. No, I do not eat vegetables. So, what does my nutrition story mean for hockey players like you? Well, you don't have to believe me on anything that I've said or that I've written here. Like I mentioned earlier, there are likely many cases that I'm missing, many details that I'm missing. But the very fact that I can list out 99% of everything I'm eating, that tells you the most important takeaway, that there is no question that you need to pay attention to what the hell you're ingesting if you want the best performance and what those foods will do for you. And I believe an animal-based diet is very manageable for hockey players because I'm doing it. I know a couple other pro athletes who are doing it too because they were on some. They were marketed under Paul, but that goes to show you as well. It does work in high level professional leagues too. But for one, meat is very, very difficult to have problems with. And those who do likely have an artificial circumstance happen to them rather than something that's evolutionarily consistent, because we've actually been eating meat for quite a long time. And we originally started eating meat. If you think about the evolutionary eating hypothesis or the evolutionary nutrition hypothesis, the things that fit into that most is the food from other animals that you kill and the ripeness of fruit. We develop color vision to detect ripe fruit. So things like the things that are not green, basically, are dark green. Things that can stand out in an environment like that. So that's why I'm wondering if the people who have trouble eating meat are have had something artificial happen to them, where it's like a I saw somewhere that there's like a tick bite that you could get from like a lab that will actually make you allergic to meat. But like, because it's from a lab, that means it's artificial. That means it's made up by humans to do something like that. Other than that, who's allergic to meat? I don't know. I don't know many people who are actually like will get an allergic reaction to clean meat if they try it. Plus, it's got one of the more nutrient dense products that's out there. One of the more nutrient dense foods that's out there, that they're like bioavailable. And the thing is, it tastes great. Even if you put just some salt on it, which I do, I don't put the extra seasoning on it. I just put salt on it. It tastes great. Honey is tasty too. Fruit is also tasty. If you can tolerate vegetables, like that's okay. And that's definitely way better than the SAD diet or the standard American diet, which is also sad. In my opinion, look at it this way. There's a reason that broccoli and spinach, raw broccoli and raw spinach, taste not good at all when you try to eat them without seasoning or without cooking them. And it's because they don't really want you to eat them. But if you're okay with them, go ahead and eat as you please. Also, eat as much as you want. I don't think restriction is the way to go. And that's where most diets fail, actually, from what I've seen. I believe restriction is not the way to go, and it leads actually to less compliance. I personally don't track my calories for this reason. I track my macros like a little bit, but it's all like up here. I don't have a tracker for it. I used to take pictures of my meals, but that was like 2 years ago too. I don't do that currently. I just eat until I'm full. I prioritize the meat first, and we'll have the fruits, the honeys, and the raw dairies as my snacks, just to fill me up. But imagine you're getting ready for a big game. Would you perform better with less stomach weight or more stomach weight? I was told a long time ago that about 3 to 4 hours before a big game to eat a meal is a great time and a more optimal time than any other. I align with that suggestion. Obviously, it depends on the foods that you eat and how you react to them. Like for me, I would eat a lot less dairy than I do at the moment, just to keep things a little bit lighter. I would probably eat more meat, actually, now that I think about it. And I'm not sure if I would eat the lean more so than the fat one, but that would be interesting to see how I'd feel on that before a game day. But basically, the 3 to 4 hours before game time, that seems to work. And I did that. I did that for a long time with my other meals that I ate. If you decide to commit to a diet like this, it may take a while and possibly longer than what I took, because it was basically it was over a summer. It was over like less than 6 months to adjust things. Like where I was first like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. May of 2022, I said I'm going to go as gradual as I can, and then slowly implement this. Slowly look at the areas and things that are going into my body. Develop an awareness around that. Just do it over time. I'm not going to rush this. I'm not going to make everything change immediately. I'm going to take my time with this. And the reason I say that it may take you longer than it took me is because I already had a little bit of awareness with what I was eating. I have a peanut allergy, so I have to be on the lookout for many, many things that go into my body. Anyway, at least I took that approach. I have some friends who are like, fuck it, I'm just going to eat whatever I want and see if I react to it. But it's like, no, I took the route where it's like, I'd rather not go to the hospital. So that's I was already primed to take an approach to changing things in my way of eating, just because I was afraid that some things would kill me. So that's why I say it may take you longer than it takes me. Just go at your own pace, take micro steps. You're going to have a different path than me. And honestly, the simplest way to a dietary change of any type is one step at a time. Is simple little swap, one simple little swap at a time. And there's no need to rush, like I said. So even if you add an extra egg to your breakfast, so you're eating 3 eggs instead of 2, or 4 eggs instead of 3, that's enough of a change. You just continue to take micro steps, take the minimum necessary step, the minimum necessary dose that you need to making a change like this if you want it. So, and then they build off of each other. Micro steps will build off of each other. When you start to take enough, you'll have the radical shift in your life and your performance that you have always desired. And that is why I'm on the animal-based diet. And that is why I think it can work very well for hockey players. Thank you for listening. And I'll see you next week.